Bob Cyphers spent his career as a news reporter for CBS affiliate KMOV in St. Louis, including an unusual murder in nearby St. Charles, Missouri in 1992. As retirement loomed, he was asked to join one last-ditch effort to find a serial killer. That's 3 decades after the case went cold. Detectives convened a task force in 2021 to review the case and retest evidence using new DNA technology. Cyphers embedded himself with the task force as a reporter. Cyphers interviewed witnesses and family members of the 6 people killed in 5 retail stores along I-70. He looked for links to other serial murder cases that looked similar to the I-70 killer, and he wrote a book based on a 7-part feature aired on KMOV. Cyphers retired and now lives in Normal. He stopped by WGLT to talk with Lauren Warnicki at the tail end of a media tour promoting Dead End inside the hunt for the I-70 killer.
Usually you retire and you dream about going to Florida and the waves. Our grandbabies are here. And so here we are in the cornfields of Normal, Illinois.
The first thing I want to know is about the decision of this task force that came together 30 years after the crimes, and the decision of the task force to involve the press. And by press, I mean you.
The police officers who had worked the original cases that may have retired, the new officers that are handling the case now, they brought in the FBI, they brought in ATF and DNA, and they wanted to take one last crack at it. And so they called me one day and said, come on by, let's talk. And could you provide more than a one-track thing? Why they chose me? I'd been there a long time. In media, people come and go. In journalism, you move up and you move around. I elected to stay and raise a family. I had contacts. I knew people. When you develop sources over time, they're not going to be sources for very long if you don't treat them right. And maybe I had a reputation over time for being in St. Louis for such a long period of time that I'd built up enough trust there.
When you first learned about this case in 1992, at that point, did they realize that this was connected to serial murders?
No.
Okay.
St. Charles is what connected it when they got the ballistic reports. Mm-hmm. And they realized the ballistic reports came in St. Charles, and it was the goofy gun.
Yeah.
The Irma Werke gun. And it was like unbelievable, And then as they start nosing around, has anybody else ever had a crime that had the Irma Werke gun? And keep in mind, 30 years ago, there was no internet. Communication from police departments was non-existent. But then they realized, oh yeah, we just had that ballistics here in Indy, and here in Terre Haute, and here in Wichita, all in the same month. And then they realized we had the serial killer.
When in your consciousness did it kind of, I don't want to say fade away, but I guess run cold, both in the news cycle and also in the police department?
Yeah. St. Louis is a big town. It's a major market. And the FBI crime results, it's always ranked near the top of the most dangerous homicide cities in the world. So unfortunately, one goes away and the next one's right around the corner. A horrific story. I covered the original story. It was always because I was out there and I was rarely in the field. I was a producer behind the scenes, but I was in the field for this. I always followed it. It was always kind of interesting. But after, you know how it is.
Yeah.
The show's called 48 Hours. If you don't find a killer, it's kind of tough. And after a few weeks went by, they had nothing until we got the ballistics in. Police did not want to release the information. They felt it was something they had to hold back. And there was a lot of debate going on back and forth. My bosses knew I had something about the case. They're pressuring me. I wasn't going to burn the police department and my sources by releasing it. At the same time, I was lobbying the police department that they had to get it out. And there was a lot of internal debate there. It wasn't because of me they did, but they finally decided to. And I think today they think it was a mistake. But but at the time, at least it stopped the killings.
There are many things that are very unusual about this cold case. The bizarreness of his travel patterns, the selection of retail locations in broad daylight, congested areas, and also his method of killing. You mentioned the very unusual gun. This person appears to have walked in, shot these people in the back of the head, and walked out.
Right.
What did you learn from police about the nature of his crimes and his method of killing?
It's the thrill of the kill for this guy, which is, I think, what scares random people more than anything. I mean, this was anybody, anywhere, at any store.
The other thing that I think is really unusual about this particular case is when we hear about cold cases in the media, a lot of times you can point to reasons why they're cold, being about police misconduct, messing up the crime scene investigation. And from what you've written here, everything was handled with care. And the police did their jobs. They were talking to one another. Like, all the police were really working this case.
A tremendous respect everywhere I'd been. I'll just give you a couple of examples. I'm traveling on a media tour for the book a couple of weeks ago, and I'm in one of the cities. And who pops up there at the police department while I'm there but Kelly Rhodes, who's handling the job in St. Charles now. Kelly has one job all day, this case. And you can argue on one hand, is that a good way to spend taxpayer money to pay somebody to work on the 30-year-old case? I think it is worth taxpayer money. I think it sends a signal to these families, to these victims, to the public, to the next killer who's thinking about something. The people I've met are so determined how important it would be for them to solve this. And I've made that clear from the beginning. This is a first thing for me. I don't care. I'm not going to make much money on this book. I'm going to probably lose money for what I spend traveling around and stuff. And the time I put into it, I'd make like a penny an hour. I could care less. To be able to possibly end my career by helping the police departments in some small way as the last thing left on this now with the task force done, that might be on bookshelves, that might be in libraries, that might get somebody to pick this book up that never heard of it, never read it, and sees the Irma Werke gun and knows somebody who had one, or sees something that might make sense. That would be a thrill for me to know that I had helped these people that have given their lives to solve this case.
Police have identified a suspect who Cypher says is alive and well and living near one of the crime scenes. Dead End: Inside the Hunt for the I-70 Killer is available on Amazon and in bookstores nationwide. Bloomington Public Library will host author Bob Cyphers for a talk in July. Cyphers spoke with WGLT's Lauren Warnicki.